Welcome to another episode of Tangled Rights. I am one of your hosts, Justin W. Wilson. I look like a mess. I've been running around the last couple days. Have been nutty.
Yeah.
Who are you?
You were out of town last
weekend. Yeah.
I am Shane D. Cox, Esquire. Sounds so pretentious,
Dude,
but
it does.
It does.
I hate using my middle initial, but then that
other attorney.
really nice guy, I can't talk crap on him. He's such a sweetheart. But why does he have to be older? And what are the chances in one town that our names are both Justin Wilson?
Those are very common names, both of those.
Yeah, but put two common names together is less common, sir.
Yeah.
All right?
All right.
There's a few famous people, some Cajun cook. People used to call me that all the time. They would use his little catchphrases when I was a kid because he was famous back in like the 80s. And then there was a Formula One driver that I believe was British that got killed a couple years ago.
Oh,
racing.
really?
Yeah, he was good, supposedly. It was Formula One.
It is episode 58 of Tangled Rights. We're into our second year.
We're not your attorneys.
We'll give that. This is not creating a legal relationship or attorney-client relationship between us and you by way of this podcast. Consult your local attorney, please, because there are many legal things we talk about, and we're not intending to give you legal advice.
No.
What's going on in town? Well, what's going on in the world right now, Justin? Crazy stuff.
Lots of insanity. Locally, what you're talking about, I know what you're talking about.
Locally, Los Angeles.
Some civil unrest, or I don't even know if you'd call it unrest, just civil
protests.
It's protests, but I'm trying to find a better word for it.
A
public display of a dissatisfaction with government policies.
Yeah.
Boom.
That's good. No, that's good. It's not an upheaval because
not
in specific instances. I mean, most of it's peaceful and not causing issues, but there are instances that are causing big issues.
Squeaky wheel gets the grease always. So
and that's what the news hones in on, and they're just here to have us consume the news, and they make money off of us.
Which is what caused me yesterday to delete my Instagram. I get most of my news through there because I don't really watch TV, just like streaming stuff. And I don't remember what I saw. I saw something, and I never usually read the comments. Like I'll just look, oh, this is what happened. I'm watching the video, whatever. But then I clicked on the comments, and my brain melted. And I just said, fuck, sorry, Mr. Cox. I can't do this. And I went and deleted it.
Okay, well, we want to talk about riots because there's a ton of legal implications.
Protests.
Riots, protests. I mean, riots is definitely a
One man's riot is another man's protest.
There you go. Obviously, there are peaceful protests that often happen and
are encouraged by the Constitution.
Not encouraged, but allowed. Like encouraged, maybe. I don't know.
I think it's encouraging because
it's neutral. It's neutral on it. You're allowed to do it.
Yes, but if you look at it in the historical context, that was the first time the government affirmatively said, you have the right to do this. Before that, if you did it, they just beat your ass and throw you in jail. So I think in a roundabout way, it is encouraging that discourse because that's what got us to a representative republic in the first place.
Sure.
People talking. You look at common sense, right? Thomas Paine, he was sending out the leaflets and all that crap. And then you've got, all the other stuff that was going on with those people back in the day with the Federalist Papers and everything.
Instead of
I get what you're saying. It's not saying, hey, go forth and protest, but I do believe codifying it is kind of saying, hey, we're cool with this. Definitely do it.
And one of the big signs I'm seeing is like end the king state or something like that. No kings, no king country. And that just goes back to...
Are they trying to do something to England?
No, they're saying that Donald Trump is, reminiscent of a king, and making his own laws, whatever.
Executive orders?
I think it's more through ICE. I mean, this is specifically about ICE, and that these are the signs, and this is saying that it's not like it's our country's becoming like that.
This is the thing that
kicking out undocumented
irks me about this whole process and this whole conversation. We have, and let's just use the year 2000 as like the first year, right? Let's just say that's the first year of real history because things started getting more technological. You started having cell phones right around then, videos of stuff.
Yeah.
So someone would say something and it would be recorded and then they could say something else a few years later and we could like see if they're the same.
Yeah.
And oftentimes they're not, or they keep the numbers of people who are deported and like the ICE facilities that are used to house children and things like that. Like when were they built and who was president then and who hadn't even thought about being president probably at that point. Like This is the part that makes me mad. It's like, I remember this shit, and you can look it up. Trump hasn't come even close. And I'm not saying that he's doing a good thing. Numbers-wise, Obama was the deportation president and drone strike president. Like, I'm not saying that what Trump's doing good. I'm just saying we can't be like, oh, everyone else was great and he's a king when the other people were thrown out.
We're not getting political.
I'm not getting political. This is why I delete my Instagram. It's bullshit. You're all stupid.
There are specific instances now that people are legitimately seeing happening in courtrooms. I mean, happening in a ton of different places. We had a client recently we'll talk about who got an ICE detainer.
He got
on
screwed.
A very speculative case that we didn't believe warranted.
Even the DA agreed with us.
And the DA dismissed the case because she knew that our client was in an ICE detainer, hopefully to keep him in the country for this conduct that maybe you could argue was criminal, but
it was certainly criminal, but it wasn't criminal the way it was charged. And she agreed with me from the outset, ICE detainer aside. And so one thing I will say about that particular prosecutor, shout out Dina Renetti, she's a hard-nosed prosecutor. She'll go to bat on cases that other people would tell her, hey, the facts are bad, don't waste your time. That being said, the opposite is also true. When she sees something and can read between the lines and say, this conduct doesn't rise to this level, especially taking all the facts into consideration, I kind of gave her a gold star after this case because of the way that she treated it.
Yeah.
And she didn't take my word for it. I gave her the info. She made some follow-up phone calls. She called the other organizations that were involved in the investigation and then got back to me. You're right. And I thought that was super cool.
And then we had this was a criminal case that got dismissed, and yet the defendant was still deported, right? So
this is the part that's confusing to me. So he was here illegally, but he had something in process, right? Like he'd put a packet in because I think it was an F visa because his wife is American, his children are American.
Sure.
He'd been here for a long time.
Yeah.
And so when you get an arrest, that can basically throw the packet off. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to just come get you, theoretically, because your paper's in, you're here. At the time you were here and using a process that was allowable for your status here, right? So without the arrest, I don't think they would have been able to come to get him. And I'm guessing that's why they did it the way they did it, is they were like, oh, here's these people we can't actually get a hold of. Let's make sure we look out for their names if they come across us for like a DUI or something like that, and we'll just get rid of them. And that seems to be what occurred because he ended up getting deported, even though the case got dismissed.
Yeah,
out.
It's a separate. I mean, they still can use that police report as some sort of evidence against him for, in the immigration
proceeding. And I
proceeding.
thought the immigration attorney, and I don't know a lot about immigration, but I thought that attorney did nothing because I had to do most of their work for them to gather public information to give to them, and I was doing it like outside the scope of my representation, just because it's like, look, I don't want to see this family lose their dad on some dumb shit.
So we'll talk about rioting, protesting. I don't want to interchange those words. I think they are different, but protests can turn into riots pretty quickly.
Can riots turn into protests?
And riots can
I don't think
maybe
so.
de-escalate into
maybe
pretty rare.
I think once you riot, you're in riot zone, even if you're not rioting anymore. The cops are going to say, no, get out of here.
But of course, there's a First Amendment protected activity for any human being, I guess not sovereign citizens, but any person within the United States
please don't bring their evil upon us. I don't want to deal with them.
Has the freedom of association and freedom to be on public, not private, but public
with
roads.
Exceptions.
We have a lot that happens we're right by the federal court building, and a lot happens right there. There's been like barricades up there for a long time. They were not there for the first few years of my law practice, but
you're talking about the ballards out front on the sidewalk?
They put in the gates on the stairs now.
Oh yeah,
yeah. They put in
those channel that
metal.
Stupid.
So they have specific entrances. It used to just be a huge open staircase. Like first few years of my law practice.
You know how long that building's been here?
It's
been here a while.
Lloyd D. George. It's been since I've started practicing back in 2015.
But do you remember it as a kid? Like because it looks like a new
I would
building.
never come downtown as a kid. Yeah.
What?
I mean, why would I come downtown as a kid?
Because you get to see all the weird stuff, dude.
2001 is when it was completed, according to AI Google. But
it looks newer than that, man.
It's a beautiful building, and we've commented before. Federal courthouses are usually just real pretty, real pretty inside, and
marble inlay and all that
and
stuff.
Then inside the building too, like where the judge sits and everything is just like very structured, very serious. Like,
dude.
There's the cushioned seats, in the back. It's different than state court.
That's the one thing about going to federal court that I hate, though, is it's like so. Like I walk up there in a 3-piece suit with my little bag and all my stuff, and this guy will greet me at the door, but not to let me in. He's like, "Yo, give me your business here." Not like that, obviously. But
You
it's
need
like,
your ID card. Yeah,
yeah. They'll check you. They're serious about it, and then they run you through. I think it's a couple of different. The metal detector, and then there's like a special scanner. They put all your bags and everything through.
Yeah, and that's that's kind of normal, but normal. IDing is specific to some courtrooms.
Sure,
and not all. It just depends, but they usually ask you like where you're going to. They don't want
100%.
just
what hearing do you have today?
They don't just want people in there. So federal court's a little more serious, and that's been primarily where I've seen these gatherings take place. Just right here on Las Vegas Boulevard.
The Free Palestine one was right at the northwest corner of the parking structure. So like you got the federal building, and then you go up to this next street. I forget what it is. I think it's by the FedEx office.
Okay.
That's where the Free Palestine one was. I remember the BLM stuff started somewhere, but it ended across the street at the bankruptcy court, where they like tried to breach the doors and whatnot.
Yeah.
And spray painted all over. I took some pictures of that. I came down the next day.
And then the bankruptcy court, another federal building, is just on the west side of the street.
Across the street.
So a lot of stuff happens there, and it's kind of, I mean, the protests are happening against the federal government. So I don't know if that's the plan, like if that's, anyway, regardless, we'll say here in Las Vegas, where all these protests are happening now after big Los Angeles protest, and the state, or I guess the county, shut down these protests pretty early on.
It started at 7 from the pamphlet that I was given, and then the first, because I deleted my socials, so I can't like look at the normal news source. But I think it was Channel 8 said that like at 9:30 was when Metro tweeted, "It's now an unlawful assembly due to illegal activity," but they weren't very specific. And I didn't follow up this morning because I had court, but I didn't really find exactly what the illegal activity was.
Right, and this is why we want to talk about this. We're lawyers. Maybe we didn't announce that in the beginning. We're lawyers. I'm Shane Cox.
Somehow.
I said Esquire.
You did.
So I am a lawyer. We are a law practice in Las Vegas, Cox & Wilson Law. And we talk about legal things, if this is your first time, and many illegal things. And we want to talk about this comparison of an unlawful assembly versus the First Amendment, and how can those even coexist? Like, how do those things work together? So, Justin, you're just the legal guru for us. So tell me, like, what's the difference? Like, why can't we just assemble?
Again, it gets into that, what I said, I was kind of tongue in cheek saying that like one man's protest is another man's riot. Unlawful assembly, I think, is an amorphous term unless there is a definition in Nevada, which I will Google this real quick to see. Perhaps there is one, and then that will provide us some guidance. But if not, then it can be anything you want it to be.
There is a statute.
Unlawful assembly. If two or more persons shall assemble together and do an unlawful act and separate without doing or advancing towards it. Okay. So that's not any more helpful. So unlawful acts, right? Trespassing. And I'm thinking of things that would typically happen in
destruction of property.
Yeah, vandalism, destruction of property.
Misdemeanor. Yeah.
Battery. Because the police officers, at least, so with the BLM riots or protests here, it wasn't exactly riots. It did get a little hanky there at the end. I left before all that because people in the crowd kept telling me that they thought I was a cop. Like I'm walking and I ran into a buddy of mine's.
You have a lot of people that tell you look like a cop.
Bro.
You were a prosecutor.
I don't care.
You had a badge, didn't you?
Before, not no more.
You were a Marine too.
Wear your plate carrier under your shirt.
I did not wear my plate carrier under my shirt. I was carrying a gun. Yeah,
which you had a legal right to do.
Which I had a legal right to do because I had a concealed carry permit. It was. I even carried a subcompact so no one would see it. I didn't want any problems. And as soon as stuff started getting weird, anyway, one of my buddy's friends was there, and we were BSing like as we were walking. The cops, man, they were right up against us. They were following. They would bound. So bounding means like one person stopped at a spot, the other one runs up forward, and then they go like this, right? So you had people in vehicles, and they were basically hanging off the side of the SUVs. So there were tons of them. Some in riot gear, some not. And then they would stop and get out. And so the sidewalk would be covered like Las Vegas Boulevard versus being on the sidewalk. And then the other group from back here would load back up and go back to the front, right? It was all down the line, but there were tons of people. And I remember at one point we were walking and I wasn't chirping at the cops. I didn't care. I mean, about that. Somebody said something to these cops And I've seen with like riot gear, they do this like, it's a tactic to try and like be imposing. And literally what they did is they sort of like jumped at us and smacked their batons on their, either their helmets or no, but it made a ton of noise. And it makes you want to like these guys are, it's dumb. So I think that's how you could get the battery. You could get a lot of different things. You could get, I mean, I don't know if we have terroristic threats. I've never seen that. I know we have it virtually, but you could get some situation where the guy's like, oh, I'll fight you, cop. Can't say that.
I mean, yeah, there's resisting public official is probably
That's why
like
they're cops.
Like instant.
Yeah, sure.
Resisting public official is going to happen.
That's
right?
going to be a difficult one though, because you're allowed to do what you're doing.
Well, if there's an order to stay out of this area and then they refuse, that's a resisting.
Gets us into the neatest part of this whole thing, designated protest zones.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this. It was like the first time I think it happened was probably in like the mid 2000s. They did it in DC, and it was to protest something with climate, I believe. I can't exactly remember what it was, or maybe NATO. But like, so basically they were protesting right outside across the street, because you can't interfere and all this stuff. You have to do it out of the street, blah, blah, blah. But what they did is they were like, oh, well, this is too close. It's going to be potentially a problem. So they kicked it down the way, like a mile and a half away from the actual building that they wanted to protest. And so then that begs the question, are you really able to exercise your rights?
And for the analysis, like typically these things are always like there's a comparison, okay? Because the government has an interest to protect the public, protect property, okay? And private and
whatever's happening,
property.
Right?
They don't want people getting hurt. I think everybody agrees with that. And sometimes if you gather that many people, somebody's going to get hurt. The chances just increase with more people.
Correct.
So there is a government purpose, and usually you compare. Hey, what is the right that's being infringed upon potentially, and what is the government purpose? That's in like across a lot of areas of constitutional law. How they compare them is different depending on what it is.
Is this rational basis?
No, this wouldn't be just a rational basis.
Compelling.
This would be compelling.
Compelling
yeah,
government
this
interest.
would be compelling.
So I remember that there's three.
And for our listeners, it just depends on what kind of right you're looking at. There's just different tests, and some are stricter than others. But we'll suffice it to say that there is kind of a scale. You see the scales of justice and law. This is kind of one of those with scales. So the government is allowed to, say that there is, if people are lighting things on fire, of course,
arson.
The cops can come in and
that's a crime.
Put an end to it.
Or if it's not arson, it's probably there's probably a code for burning something in a place you're not supposed to burn it, like outside of a designated burning zone. Right? Like, no, seriously.
I get you.
If you light a candle in some places,
Yes.
Yeah, there was we talked about
candles.
That guy on the bench, and he had the candles, and the cops come up to him, and they tried to get him for like burning in a place or whatever,
fires, whatever. Yeah.
What was I going to get to? Oh, sometime after the unlawful assembly order last night, I read that they used tear gas and rubber bullets.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
That'll cause them to disperse.
And it could be excessive force. It potentially
100%.
could be. So it's hard to know. There are so many people and instances and things happening last night that we're not, going to be able to follow all of it. Was the state of Nevada or Las Vegas Metro that's over this area, were they too quick on, calling for an unlawful assembly? They maybe could have been, but I guess it is in light of things very recently happening in Los Angeles that in some areas got out of hand, and in some areas are, totally legitimate protests against, hey, don't kick our parents out of the country. You know, don't kick our brothers, cousins. This is what the people are saying. Don't kick these people out of the country. They deserve to be here, whatever, the argument is, which is totally protected under your U.S. Constitution, no matter where the person was born, came from. If they're here with papers, if they're here without papers, they're still allowed under the First Amendment to go out and protest. So
sure.
That's awesome activity. I think it's great that people do that. That's fantastic. Well, it is protected under our Constitution. I love our Constitution.
It's the only way to get any attention to the issue. Like if I sit in my house and I'm just pissed, it's not going to do anything.
It's an echo chamber and nothing really happens. But then at least people are seeing, And there have been changes made because of these things. People certainly make changes because of it. The body cam that we have now, like that we see from our police officers, is because of this.
Right.
There have been protests that have led now to cops have body cam. We were talking last week about a cop beating up somebody, and it's on body cam.
Even the body cam didn't quite show it,
and the body cam did not quite show it. But talking about technology, thankfully, there's a business that has video right by.
Yeah. So that's the one thing that I kind of get myself into a mental corner on this, because I recognize that the squeaky wheel does get the grease. That's how you get the attention to the issue, right?
Yes.
And that if you want to amplify that attention, make the conduct be a lot more provocative. Meaning, instead of protesting, standing, holding signs, I'm going to protest, stand, hold a sign, I'm going to walk, and I'm going to yell my slogan. I'm going to be louder.
Sure.
Okay. That we go from like a volume 1, volume 2, whatever. And then if you ratchet it all the way up to 10, we've got some of what's going on in LA. I mean, well, maybe not 10, maybe an 8. What they're doing out there is like an 8. Setting cop cars on fire. I saw a video of a dude throwing a brick off of an overpass, and the cop, so basically it was the outside lane on like a freeway, but everything had slowed down a lot. All the inside lanes had police vehicles blocking it, and they were all screwed up. This one was traveling through like it was going to go, and this brick went through the windshield.
Yeah.
It didn't hit the driver. So if they had a passenger, though, that dude got fucked up.
Yeah, and that's what can happen with these things.
Every summer you hear of some
that's
kid,
criminal activity. Right,
you hear of some kid in the Midwest on out in the middle of nowhere in Iowa or Kansas or wherever, throwing a brick or throwing a rock off of an overpass like a 10-year-old, just screwing around and killing somebody.
Yep.
Because it's a rock that weighs 4 pounds.
And a car's moving at 50 miles per hour.
However fast, whack.
Yeah, I don't want to get hit with a brick at 50 miles per hour.
My cousin almost got killed by a turkey vulture when we were kids, because he was going in his mom's Mustang like 70 miles an hour down the highway.
Turkey vulture was crossing the street?
No, it was eating something.
In the street?
Off the side, and when it popped up, it just turned into him and went straight through the windshield.
That happens with deer too, yeah.
Well, the bird is a lot lighter and smaller. Anyway, the point being, it doesn't have to be very much at that speed to be a deadly weapon.
No.
And so you see this stuff and it's like, man, like part of me saying that is not a good idea. But then in that same vein of like, if I get the attention, you're going to get attention. Is that a good way to make change? I don't know. I don't know the answer. Because the whole reason that we're here, the reason we're doing this is because some hard-nosed dudes back in the day said no and killed people. Like literally killed people to get the rights that we have.
Yeah.
Like the Constitution came after a war.
Yes.
Right.
Us revolting from a king country, right?
Yeah, a king country. And I'm pretty sure they literally tarred and feathered tax collectors.
Yeah.
Like they did awful things that by like modern 2025 standards, most people would consider outside the realm of conduct they would do, even in the realm of advancing social change.
Yeah. To fight for these First Amendment rights.
So that's such a strange question, right? Because if I asked Ben Franklin, he'd say, no, you chop their heads off, obviously. You don't just set their cars on fire, you kill them. What do you mean?
Right. And it comes back to this. I mean,
I'm going to leave to France, by the way.
This is all an argument about immigration and what the proper mechanism is for, people to come to this country that otherwise can't or have crossed borders and have created roots here and don't even have connections in the countries that they came from. Maybe came over at 1 or 2 years old. It's definitely,
and
had never really lived in another country, and all they know is the US.
This issue is so complicated.
It's so complicated.
Well,
we're not going to fix it, right?
The fringes are the part that make it very, very difficult.
Sure.
What you were just talking about, a kid who got brought here that's literally never lived anywhere else. Like, remember that trial we did?
Which one?
The essay trial?
Yeah.
He would have gotten sent back to Morocco. He hadn't been there since he was 2, and he's 28.
Yeah.
If convicted, that's where he would have got sent.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
and some people say that's the punishment on your parents. That's
right. That's a crazy case. But then on the other side, tough. You've got those dudes that I read about in Colorado that came from, what was it? Venezuela or El Salvador. They're some kind of weird offshoot of MS-13.
Yeah.
They literally have nothing here. They just come the way that all people come.
Sure.
But the difference is they didn't come to behave and like benefit from our society. They came to use us like a roast duck and eat better.
Or they have that lake, the Lake and Riley Act that we talked about recently.
So that's the other side, and it's so difficult.
Each party uses the poll to argue, and this comes out in the news where it's like most of the instances are somewhere in the middle, and
it's a bell curve. Okay.
people don't see eye to eye on those. So it's tough. It's tough. And whatever party is in charge is going to make their rules.
And then the other side, the part that's the most difficult, I think, is it gets sensationalized by all the places that provide the information, right? Like, you don't ever see a news source just saying, this is what happened here today. Think about it what you will. Draw your own conclusions and come up with original thoughts. They're like,
it uses music to, incite your anger.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, exactly.
And it'll be like the soft piano in the background, and then all of a sudden, and like this is why we're getting upset and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know, dude. It just sucks
Or
because
a story of a little girl who lost her dad because
her father was deported.
Like, yeah, I get it. Like,
and the other thing that is important to note here is that the government, it's huge. The federal government is monstrous.
Oh yeah,
I think it's the number one employer in our country, right? Like by a substantial margin. And if you can imagine trying to pick up something the size of a grain of sand with your bare hands, that's them trying to handle some of these issues, some of these fringe issues.
Yeah,
it's like, I have a process. That's what I do. That's how I get the sand. There's one kernel. Well, guess what? That's how we're getting the sand.
Yeah.
As opposed to, oh, this one's different. It's one piece. They don't do that. And that's the other issue is that, like,
nuance is costly, I guess, huh?
And after that interaction I just had with the bad check unit, they're not really good at independent thought and abstract thinking, most of them. That's why they work for the government.
Yeah.
So
everything a hammer sees is a nail, huh?
Yep. And if you question one of their processes or policies, and I didn't even like really question it, I kind of just like, really? The attorney has to do this? Like, I have to give you my ID to copy it? Okay. And the lady rolls her eyes at me, and then the whole rest of the time she's like chirping at me. She's like, well, you can leave if you want. I'm like, no, I'll stay here. I'm in it to win it. And at the end, she's like, I hope you have a great day. I was like, you too, dude. And she's like, you're not going to bully me, you fucking bitch.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sheesh.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Cox.
Yeah.
All right. I'm doing so good, dude. I'm working so hard to not cuss.
You've been good. Well, let's
all right, let's move on.
We're going to move on from rioting and protesting. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat. We'd like
love
to
hear questions about your thoughts on riots.
All right. I want to move into, this happened a week ago today, but you were back home in Kansas doing a trial. So I was here covering for you. And we had the case of Victoria Goodwin come up for sentencing. Okay?
Not our case.
Not our case. I was in the courtroom when it happened.
We just happened to have been in every single proceeding.
We're just always
from the beginning.
It just went up the same track that you have, and so it's like we were there the whole time.
She was in Crawl, right?
She was in Crawl. I was in front of Judge Crawl that day for 2 cases, and I see the news. I see the cameras, and I'm like, oh, what's going on?
Great.
There's different things that are in the news that I kind of see, but really don't pay attention to because busy helping out our people. So I'm there. Victoria Goodwin, as a reminder, Victoria Goodwin was the wife of Aaron Goodwin, who is one of the stars of the Ghost Adventure show, which is Zach Bagans' show about hunting ghosts and paranormal activity. Austin, did I say that right? Paranormal activity. Watching.
Did you say it wrong last time?
I just don't know.
No, you say the wrong show.
I'm not. Ghost Adventures.
What did he say
Ghost
before?
Adventures. Ghost Hunters, which are losers. Ghost Adventures are awesome.
They don't go on adventures. They just hunt. That sounds stupid to me.
So Aaron Goodwin, Victoria Goodwin had attempted to hire an inmate in the Florida correctional system to murder her husband, Aaron Goodwin.
A current inmate.
There was some kind of relationship
there? You're talking about the dude in prison?
Yeah.
There was some kind of relationship there. And so she wanted him to murder her husband, Aaron, instead of divorce, which I just think, I don't know. I hear divorce is tough.
Divorce is messy, but I think murder is probably a little bit more messy.
Murder and attempt murder. Conspiracy to commit murder is what she pled to. I was busy talking to your clients that you left behind for me.
Our clients?
They're yours. They're yours.
No.
These guys are yours. I had never talked to them before. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of heard the things going on when they're talking here, but kind of like just dealing with my 2 guys who were sitting next to each other and their issues about, going to prison and or jail and staying there. So I watched afterwards and I did see myself in the video. I posted about it because I was like, oh, this is my first appearance on Court TV.
I'm famous
now I'm like Justin, I'm on Court TV. So Victoria Goodwin had admitted to the charges. They had all these text messages, they had everything. So it was a pretty open and shut case. This was sentencing here in Nevada, and I think in most states, they'll have the defendant will speak first, and then any victims or family members of victims or any representatives can decide to speak last. And I've seen that every time. I don't know if you've ever, not seen
It's
it.
a statutory right.
It is a statutory right. It doesn't have to.
I think it's a statutory right to be heard last.
Yes,
or
it
the
is.
state to be
so
heard
they
last.
so they can invoke it.
Mhm.
And so the only victim was Aaron Goodwin. He was the only speaker. Victoria spoke first, kind of apologized for everything. And she's sitting like right in front of me, and I'm kind of hearing everything. And then Aaron got up and he just started bawling, like full on ugly crying, like talking about who he thought that he loved, his wife, was actually planning his murder and demise. So we'll probably clip in some of that here.
Oh, come on. Don't.
Your Honor, for 7 years, I thought I was in the most loving relationship and marriage with my best friend. Someone who I trusted whole heart and laughed with every day. Someone who made me feel like I was like I was her one and only. I was loyal to her and did whatever I could to make her happy. I thought we were something very special, and so did everyone else. After finding out she was cheating on me in September of last year with multiple men, including the man going by the name Vincent, who turned out to be Gran Amato, I gave her the option of divorce where we could try to work it out, because I love her so much. She felt so bad, and I didn't want to lose me. Every day she made me feel more special, and she was so sorry. At least that's what she told me. Now discovering she put a hit out to kill me more than once. Got blackmailed and spent almost all our savings to keep it quiet. And fell more in love with Amato. They even got spiritually married. And now I was called the first husband. They talked until she was arrested. And she sought his help to kill me. Sorry. This has led me to fear my life. I've hired armed security for weeks, not knowing it was over or not. Always looking over my shoulder and having to go through therapy and even trying to understand any of it. It's like a heartbreak no one should go through in life. I can't trust anything anymore. I cry every day. I feel so alone. She grew me into a person I never was. I will always wonder why. But worst of all, she lied to me every day. I didn't know about any of the murder plot, the hitman, or the blackmail until the detectives told me after she was arrested. Now behind bars, she's trying to manipulate through lawyers and trying to silence me and not come here today. So I wouldn't be standing here. In honor, Your Honor, this person over here, I don't know at all. Not one bit. The fact that this person did all this to me with no worry, no care, or love in her heart for me. I will never feel the same. I will never feel safe or be the same because of what she did. Especially when she gets out one day. She claims she's remorseful now that she's been caught, but there at no time before did she ever try to stop this from happening. She tried to have me killed. She gave my location to people. Truly believed we were trying. I truly believe with people she truly believed were going to harm me. She even asked for the updates on the murder. And this was all when I was just a loving husband. I thought, whether she got minimum or maximum time, I still won't feel safe whenever she's released. I feel like this deserves prison time. I don't know. So I just Just leave it in your hands, Your Honor. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
What? You don't want to clip it in?
No, I want to clip it in.
just a little bit. Hey,
too much of it.
I just want to be famous, baby.
That's fine.
I'm here.
I ugly cry myself sometimes. I don't want anybody looking at that.
So, all right. The part I want to talk about.
Right, screw it. Whatever.
The part I want to talk about is, does the punishment fit the crime? And we're going to argue about this. Are you ready for this? Because
what position am I taking?
Whatever you want. Conspiracy to commit murder. Okay. You actually have talked and hired and made plans to have someone murdered and their life, which we take very seriously.
Yes.
You know, so what is the appropriate punishment for that? And we'll reveal at the end what she did in fact get.
So conspiracy to commit murder is when you conspire with another individual and take an overt step towards achieving that goal. So Shane, we're going to murder person L. I'll get the rope, you get the bag, whatever. I go out and buy the rope, you go out and buy the bag.
Okay.
That's what you have to do. You have to do something. So she conspired with this guy. So it's weird for me, right? It is a thought crime at that point still. But at the same time, it's a thought crime for murder. So it's like maybe punishing something that hadn't gotten off the ground as much is better, considering the consequences. I'm torn about it though.
Okay, and that's why I want to talk about it. This is a Category B felony. Okay, conspiracy to commit murder. Which Category A are the big ones, kind of the actual murder.
Next to capital, but yeah.
Well, capital is kind of like a subcategory, right? Within Category A, or they their own separate. Anyway, punishment is 2 to 10 years in Nevada State Prison. Potential punishment is 2 to 10 years and $5,000 in fines, or at the judge's discretion. I'll tell you, the prosecution and defense didn't even like suggest specific numbers that they said in court anyway of what punishment it should be, which was unique, you know, for the court, for the prosecution not to say a specific number. And he actually said he could have. It wasn't like it
was a right to argue.
He had a right to argue, but he just didn't even give a specific number.
He just talked about the facts.
And so typically behind the scenes, what you're not seeing on court TV is there are what are called sentencing memorandums, okay, or sentencing memos. So both parties will submit kind of a brief, like we say the word brief, it's a document. Okay.
Sometimes not very brief at all.
Not very brief at all. It could be very long, but briefs are just like arguments given to courts. We call those briefs. So there is probably more than enough in the sentencing memorandums that the judge is able to review beforehand. And I would assume she's always very well prepared, kind of had an idea in her mind of what she was going to do. And then maybe if something comes out in court, she'll deviate from that. But I would guess she kind of had this in mind beforehand. So
they also have the PSI and typically they'll have the arrest report. So they're not going just purely off of.
Oh yeah, she has the facts. She has the evidence. She knows, this is a pretty open and shut case, and the defendant admitted to it in court, that she did in fact do this crime. So
that's the other point that's worth pointing out.
She has no history whatsoever as well.
She's already pled guilty at this point.
She's pled guilty. She admitted that this happened.
Yeah.
She admitted, and it's not like an Alford plea that we talked about where it's like, oh no, they could prove it against me. It's admitted. I did this.
I did it.
Yeah. And so sometimes you can make an argument as a defense attorney that they're owning up to it. They're taking responsibility. And that can show
contrition
or a lack of recidivism or lack of probability of recidivism.
Yeah.
Which I mean, they won't do this again. Okay. There's a better chance this person won't do this crime again. So, my argument, I went and got my haircut like right after this, and I was talking to some, my barber about it. And he's like, well, like that's pretty low. There's a lot of comments. Hey, this is really low. And like you, I said, it depends on how we look at crimes. If it's a punishment, I'm looking to pay back for what I did.
Right.
There is no actual harm done. Nobody is hurt. Nothing actually happened. Okay. It got nipped in the butt, right? Nipped in the bud. What's the saying there? You're nipped in the bud like a plant.
Before it.
So there's no actual harm done. And I know that that's not how I really feel, but I think that's a good argument to make.
It is.
Nobody's actually hurt. So are you looking at criminal law like you should pay back? Like, is it I'm paying back for what I did? Or is it I need to be punished because I did something bad? And there's different ways to look at criminal law. Are we rehabbing that person? Is that what it is? Like putting them in prison? Is that rehabbing them to then have them out of prison and not do anything like this again? Because Aaron, in his statement, says, I'm never going to feel safe for the rest of my life. Okay. Which I think is reasonable. Okay. Yeah. If somebody had hired somebody to murder you and that person's going to be out.
I mean, no one's ever hired anyone to murder me, to my knowledge, but I guarantee you a lot of people that are still alive want me dead. But also, I'm not going to tell someone how to feel about something. I've had victims when I was a prosecutor of real bad stuff as like 19-year-olds.
Yes.
That were just so, I don't know what you want to call it, like zen, right? Like, oh, this thing happened. I didn't ask for it. I can't control it. It's over. It's not part of me.
I'm going to move on.
It's just a moment.
That's
right?
cool.
But then I've had other people who have less things happen to them, but objectively what I would consider
and they
less.
dwell on them for forever.
It just affects them so much.
Yeah.
And everybody's different. But I think that also gets to personality types and stuff. So I'm not going to poo-poo on him saying that.
No, and I mean.
But also, yeah. I mean, when you're getting back to the thought crime stuff, I think it'd be different. Like, let's say you've got the situation as it is versus they do all the same stuff, but the guy ends up in his house with a knife, holding it to his throat.
Yeah.
Right? Objectively a much worse situation.
Right. And that becomes a different crime too. But I understand there's a difference.
Well, it's still
because
she didn't crime.
She didn't.
Well, then it's attempted.
Yeah. She didn't do anything different, right? She hired the guy the same. It's just what he did to get there. So I understand she's doing the same conspiracy.
Sure.
But she could be on the hook for murder. We kind of talked about that last week too. If the planning's there.
Dude, that's the other crazy thing. Like if you plan something like this and then your co-defendant gets killed.
That's another murder.
You're getting charged with murder anyway, even if the guy you tried to kill gets killed.
There's a felony murder aspect to that. Yeah,
that's what it is. It's felony murder rule. It's nuts.
So, big reveal here. She got 36 to 90 months, which is 3 years to 7.5 years in the Nevada Department of Corrections. Go to the women's prison, you know.
Not so bad. I've been there a couple times.
Visited the women's prison. And she could work off some time.
No, it's right up here. It's right on the north side of town. Well, it depends.
It's on the 15, just like almost out of town before you get to the racetrack.
Yeah. So definitely more chill than high desert, for sure.
Well, yeah. And women's prisons, I think, are unique and different too.
Sure.
Like,
there's some elements of having women in cage, for lack of a better term, that probably aren't going to be the same as having a bunch of dudes.
Yeah. So 3 to 7.5 years. Is that enough for plotting to murder somebody? Is that enough in prison for that? If somebody plotted to murder you and actually there was evidence of it, like, is that an appropriate punishment?
Yeah.
Because they'll be on probation.
For me,
they'll be on probation.
For like a good person, maybe not.
They'll be on probation afterwards too for a while.
They'll be supervised.
And if they missed, they'll be on parole. If they miss check-ins, you'll be notified. You know, if they disappear,
do something wrong.
If they disappear, you'd get notified.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that'd be scary. She doesn't seem like the type to do that. Like,
but I mean, looking at her, she doesn't look like she'd do that to begin with. Like,
yeah, no, I agree.
Kind of a sick thing that we do sometimes. We'll be sitting in court, certain other defense attorneys, and we'll be sitting there just bored. Like,
what do you?
That person.
Yeah.
What did they do? What are they in for? You know, and it's like you look at her, you're like, I don't know. You know, I would have said maybe like stealing something from fucking Ross or something. Like, you know what I mean? Something innocuous, and then
Ross
it's like,
specifically.
I don't know, bro. Like, you look at her, she looks like just a normal person.
Yeah.
But what does a criminal look like?
No, they come in all shapes and sizes.
You've been one before, right?
For what?
Sped, ran a stop sign.
Those are not crimes anymore in the state of Nevada.
When you did them, they were crimes.
And
his hobby was
jaywalking's a misdemeanor still, or that's not traffic related, is it?
Have you trespassed? Like cut a corner when you're walking somewhere. You told me about it with the dog thing.
I've been on private land before.
There you go. Look at this guy. This is what a criminal looks like right here.
He admitted to it. I didn't say when. It was over a year ago. You know, statute of limitations is running.
versus you see people that it's like, oh God, what's this guy leaving?
Oh,
what crime is he leaving from? Right.
And there's people wrongfully, accused of things. We have clients like that all the time that are in the system and like,
first off,
don't understand it.
Free my boy.
Yeah.
Didn't do nothing.
Didn't do anything.
It's a complicated situation because on the other side of the thought crime thing is you want to prevent people, incentivize them to not commit murders, not conspire to commit murders. Because I think it's the principle, and they look at this in criminality. Once you do something, it becomes easier to do. Like the very first time you do something, think about when you were a kid jumping off a diving board. The first time you did it, you were like, whoa, like, ooh. And granted, we're talking about heights, but it's the same kind of thing. There's trepidation to do this action because of whatever the consequence is.
Sure.
I'm going to A, have to kill a human, and B, I could get caught. Or C, I get killed. There's all these things, right? The first time that they do it, they're scared.
Right.
Right. You want to stop people before they do it by making them extra scared.
It gets easier. Yeah, it gets easier every time.
Because you don't want them to get to that point.
Sure.
We don't want a lawless society of like a bunch of savages with machetes and clubs walking around killing each other. It's not good for any of us. No. Turns out murder is not good for children and other living things.
Who'd have thought? Who'd have thought?
Whoa.
Wow.
You guys can clip that. That's some knowledge I'm laying on you.
All right. Speaking of murder, I got some more murders that we got to talk about.
Do we want to talk about that bench trial real quick?
Yeah, mention that bench trial you had in Kansas. Congrats, Justin. Hooray.
Hooray. Got a directed verdict. What that is at the close of the state's evidence, I moved for a verdict because saying to the court that the state couldn't possibly meet their burden beyond a reasonable doubt. It was a complicated case because it involves a bunch of like he said, she said stuff, which I think is always good for a defendant because if what one defendant is saying is normal, it's not, an alien came down or I was possessed by a demon, had to do this. Like if it's, this guy walked over here and pushed me first. And the other guy's saying, I walked over there and he pushed me first. Either one could be true. There's no corroborating, irrefutable, like a video or anything like that. And I think those cases are a little easy to deal with. Also, and no shade on this guy, but I don't think the prosecutor really prepared that heavily for it because he seemed a little shocked whenever I started crossing the victim, who I've known since I was a kid. The victim used to beat me up when I was a kid because he's like, so my buddy, we nicknamed him Tank because he's one of the Adams, and there were so many Adams in our group, but he was the biggest one, his older brother. So my buddy was 2 years older than me, and his older brother was 3 years older than him. So he was out of high school before I was even in high school. But he used to kick my ass when I was a little kid because I was mouthy. Just definitely deserved it. He was the victim, and so when he's testifying, he testifies differently than his statement. And so I get to, bait him in. Oh, you gave a statement. You were complete, truthful, blah, blah, blah. That's not what you said today. Put the statement into evidence, put the cop on. It was funny because the cop kind of walked himself into a funny thing because I tried to highlight that, whenever someone gets struck in the face, generally in the, top regions, there's less fat. So it's more likely for the skin to tear, right? You end up with a cut when you get punched. And I was like, you've certainly investigated a bunch. Because the cop tried to say, I don't know, something like that. Maybe it's possible. And I was like, well, you've investigated a bunch of batteries, right? Like, yeah, I've been doing this for 15 years. Like, probably what, more than 100? He goes, no, it's just Stockholm County. Okay, what about 20? He's like, certainly 20. Okay, and then I asked the $20 question. He says he doesn't know. Okay, well, the other guy had said that the victim shot him in the face with a BB gun. And the cop testified that there was a mark on his face, exactly where the guy's saying he got shot, like a red mark. And I used the cop's words against him. I was like, and I believe in your testimony, you said really little, right? Yeah, I said that. I said really little, like a .177 caliber BB? Well, I wouldn't know. I believe it would be like this. And I said, okay, well, you just testified you've only investigated 20 batteries. How many BBs to the face have you investigated? None. I don't know. So I thought it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with it. I like to cross both those guys because I know them personally, and I got to use my personal knowledge of the area. But yeah, at the end of the day, it was he said, she said 50-50. There was physical evidence on both of them, and the court agreed with me. So we got it dismissed before I even had to put a case on.
And that's great. That's fantastic.
Best result you can get.
That's the quickest. I mean, getting to trial always is
it sucks.
Stressful.
Which again, not the crime of the century. And my client was only in for false report to police.
Which is just stupid.
But they can put you in jail for it for a little while.
Yeah. Which he did. He did time in jail for it before?
Arrested.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then he was facing more jail time?
She. Yes.
She.
Yep.
Sorry. Well, that's good. I mean.
Yeah, it was a good time.
All right. Hooray. Practice in Kansas. Like we say, you actually do practice in Kansas.
I do sometimes.
There you go. You go to courtrooms in Kansas.
The coolest part of the whole thing, though, sorry, I forgot this. So co-counsel for the other defendant, his name was Gary House. He was my great-grandpa's lawyer.
Oh, wow.
He's in his 90s.
No.
Seriously.
Was he there? Like doing the trial with you?
He did the trial with me.
Did you get directed verdict on your defendant and?
I got directed verdict on my defendant and half of the counts on his defendant. The other half I didn't get directed verdict on. We tried. I made the first motion. He piggybacked and added some stuff. But it was just cool because when I was a prosecutor out there, I had to prosecute against Gary.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so now we've come full circle. And
That's
so
cool, man.
he did some of my grandpa's stuff, my great-grandpa's stuff. And then, I was a prosecutor against him. I actually got to apologize to him for being such a jerk when I was a prosecutor. Because we were sitting there and a little bit, he's like, "Hey, Justin, how you doing?" He's always really happy to see me. I don't know why. And I was like, "Man, I just want to say sorry for being such a dick whenever I was prosecuting." He's like, "Oh, no, you were doing your job. You were just tough." I was like, "Nah, I figured some stuff out since then. I was a dick. My bad, man." So it was just a really fun thing. That was probably the best part of the whole deal.
That is cool. Well, sometimes you have those moments that come full circle.
Yeah. It's a weird profession.
All right. Well, back to murder instead of just battery, or a different kind of battery. A murder is a...
It is still a battery. It's a harmful or offensive contact.
It's an extreme version of battery anyway.
The end of battery.
New Netflix special, okay, called Gone Girls, Long Beach Killer or something like that. Gone Girls. It's about what is being coined.
Is that a movie?
The Gilgo Beach. Yeah. So it is a play on that. The Gilgo Beach murders. Okay.
That was the one that was in American Nightmare.
Well, that's the movie that was in American Nightmare.
Okay. Yeah.
So this new next Netflix special just plays on that.
Okay.
And it's called Gone Girls. There's been a lot of media about this. There's been TV shows in the past. There's been podcasts about this. Until a year and a half ago, it appeared to be an unsolved case.
Okay.
Although they did arrest somebody for some of these murders a year and a half ago and have added charges for some of the other bodies. This guy's name is Rex Heuermann. Okay.
Okay.
So basically tracking back to 1993. Okay. This is a long time ago. Up until 2011, there had been a series of murders that happened in Long Island. Okay. Different parts of Long Island, but all within Long Island. And in December 2010, they found 4 bodies that are called the Gilgo 4, which is the Gilgo Beach is on the very south side of Long Island, basically right in the middle of Long Island. There was one report for a long time of what this guy looked like. Okay. That he was a big, ugly Shrek looking guy. Okay.
Shrek's beautiful.
Big, ugly Shrek. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. I guess Mike Myers might, I don't know. So the problem with this case and kind of the argument in this Gone Girls is a lot of them were ladies of the night, I guess. Is that how you say that? Sex workers.
So it's down by Montauk?
Who advertised on Craigslist. This is where the bodies are found if you're talking about that.
Well, I'm looking at the island and you're talking, it's like all the way on the far right side or what?
On Gilgo Beach, yeah. So they have kind of a map where all these bodies were found, okay? All within a mile of each other, mile and a half, 2 miles of each other. Okay. So for a long period of time, no leads whatsoever. This is kind of just one of those stories out there that, hey, there's this mysterious murderer. It just happened a year and a half ago that they actually are able to find, based on the stories of this guy are incredibly chilling. Because he would take the cell phones of some of these girls and call their family members and kind of taunt them. Okay.
What?
Even after these murders or while these murders are happening, he's taunting the family. And they're trying to.
Did they know they were dead at that point? Or is it just like, oh, they just got killed? He calls them.
He would just kind of talk nonsense to him most of the time. Just like, you're never going to see her again. Like kind of just like really chilling. Okay. And so these people would report it to the police. And part of the upheaval about this is the police wouldn't do anything. Okay. That's kind of all the reports, because their family members that were missing are hookers, or whatever, working in the sex industry. Their complaints weren't heard. They wouldn't do anything. That being said, it was difficult to find anyone because they just didn't know who to go after either. But that's kind of the complaints. There's these original 4, and it's, years and gaps of time between these happening,
right?
Where it's hard to pinpoint who it is besides the one report that this guy's like a Shrek looking dude. It turns out they were able to track some of these phone numbers and find out that they're all burner phones. So after years, they're able to look at the burner phones and see where these are bought and try and kind of reverse engineer it. And they find a guy, and
does he in fact look like Shrek?
I'll show you a picture of him.
Big and green with kind of like...
He's green.
I mean, he's...
That's as much of a Shrek looking dude as maybe you can...
kind of a Shrek looking dude. How big is he?
He's like 6'5". He's huge.
Okay, so he's a monster.
He's a big guy. Yes.
All right. Well,
yes.
Moral of this story, be handsome and don't be tall.
Yeah. He's 6'4". Part of the reason Gladys is obsessed with this. She heard we were talking about this, came in and
She loves this.
So they found a lot of bodies and keep finding more along this beach. They keep searching the same beach.
Have they considered just, walking from one side to the other as opposed to, we keep finding random bodies?
I'm sure that's part of their process.
Cadaver dogs, dude.
I'm sure that's part of the process, but it's
not that long of an island.
All right, whatever. Sheesh. So they keep unearthing these bodies. Okay. Some are partially decomposed because of the time element.
Yeah, it's been
they're on a beach as well, so very moist soil underneath. They have found some of Rex Heuermann's wife and daughter's hairs on some of the bodies.
His daughters.
Okay, so his own wife and daughter's hairs. His wife has been visiting him in jail and recently came out with a statement saying that, I know he's a good man. He would never do this. Although investigations have shown that every time these murders happen or when wife and daughter are out of town and Rex is kind of on his own.
He just missed them so much.
So my question...
How was that? Look at Austin.
The legal analysis, oh gosh, the legal analysis I want to get to is the idea of trying cases together. And I know you're facing this right now in a murder case.
Yes.
And trying these cases as a whole or separately, like this comes up in a lot of cases that we have. And if you point this many people at him, I think
doesn't matter.
There's a jury determination that, if it is so serious, we have to find the person that did this. Like there's tons of psychological elements to that.
Yeah.
So your thoughts on trying cases together versus separately?
I'm 50-50. There are certain instances where I think it makes the most sense. Like, first off, they're all tied together. You're going to have pieces of the puzzle from one case or from one murder to another that are fit together to make the whole puzzle that don't exist in each murder individually. But from the defense side, you want them all tried individually. Because when you have...
Because if you have a not guilty, an NG...
selection, and you hear for 14 or 20 minutes all these charges that on this date, and they read the charge, you've been there so long that the jury's starting to fall asleep because they're like, he killed 40 people. I don't got to listen anymore. Guilty, right? Like it's such a bad thing, right? Also, in cases where you've got co-defendants, it's much more complicated, right? You need to bifurcate the trial or split the trials up. I don't know. In this, I can't imagine when it's a serial killer type case that you're going to be able to split them up unless you can show, right? Like, let's say all of them match. You ever see those stupid FBI crime shows where you've got the guys that are like criminal profilers?
Yeah,
like
of course.
The long-haired kid that's like autistic or whatever.
Sure.
No, in the show he is. They talk about it.
You're talking about Criminal Minds, Matthew Gray Gubler.
Yeah, that kid.
He's from Las Vegas, actually.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. LVA, just right here.
Whoa. Came from our corner.
Yeah,
nice.
He's in our corner right now.
Nobody puts him in the corner. If you can tie those cases together like that, where it's like, they all exhibit the same pattern, I think you're going to be hard-pressed to split them up. It's going to be bad for efficiency, but it's always bad for the defendant. Anytime you're putting all these cases together where they're in separate, but you're trying them at the same time, it's just...
Yeah.
But I get it.
this will be an interesting. I mean, it's headed towards trial because
Why wouldn't
any
Why wouldn't he
case
take trial?
any case where they got to be seeking the death penalty. I would guess.
Does New York even have the death penalty?
Maybe not. So they're there's no room for negotiation on a case like this. You know, it's either, hey, you plead to spend the rest of your life in prison or get put to death.
New York's death penalty was declared unconstitutional in 2004 and has not been reinstated.
All right. Well, no death penalty. Plead to the rest of your life in prison. It's like, how about no? Like, how about I roll the dice on a trial instead?
Wait a minute. You mean I might have something goofy happen and win versus I'm guaranteeing to die there?
Yeah. Let's say you guys screw something up. The prosecution screws something up, Brady violation, whatever, something. So.
Could you imagine?
Yeah.
How many dead?
There's like 8 bodies found so far.
You get a serial killer
Something like
that's
that.
like fairly prolific in American serial killer history and they screw that up and they get a Brady violation. Dismissed.
7, 8.
Brady versus Maryland. It's like that the prosecution has to give evidence, and if they don't, the case can be dismissed. But I'm starting to learn as a defense attorney that it doesn't matter.
Oh gosh, it does matter for like Alec Baldwin. Yeah, that's how he got his case thrown out.
You're
was
famous.
Brady violation.
You'll get
If
your case,
yeah, of course. So, I
It's
just
not
think
near
it's
Montauk, by
super
the way. I
interesting.
looked it up.
What?
It's not near Montauk.
I don't know where Montauk is, so I'm not.
Bayside, obviously.
I'm not in New York. This some emo band or something?
First off, they're awesome. They're
All right.
very good.
Very good band. All right, I believe you. Okay.
They talk about Montauk.
We'll talk more about the Gilgo Beach murder and Rex Heuermann because I'm confident the case will go to trial. I believe it will.
Do you know what it's set for?
I haven't, and they keep adding like
Because they haven't dug the whole beach.
because
up.
they found more. So they started like charging 3, then they indicted him on a 4th, and then they've just found 2 more bodies in April 2025. Okay. And then he just got charged with the newest one, December 2024. And there's
maybe
there's some unidentified bodies even still. There was a child involved as well that was buried, whose mother was, a victim. It seemed
This is the worst part. What's going to end up happening? They're going to, well, not the worst part. It's good because they're uncovering, whatever. But because they're so boned up about finding this guy's victims, they're going to end up finding other evidence of crimes.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. It turns out they should change it from Gilgo Beach to Body Burying Beach or whatever.
They definitely could.
8, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's like half what your count is, right?
That is a weird comment to make. Listener question. If I get doxxed, what legal action can I take? Austin's question, I think. Nothing. I don't think that there's anything you can do.
Man.
Doxing by definition is just providing information that
And
is
allowing people to make
publicly
their own
available. It leads to negative things a lot. Like
it depends.
there's a reason a person gets doxxed though. It's because they
did something that society doesn't.
yes. And so this is just
It depends.
your home, when you own a home, there's public recordings about who owns a home, except police, judges, prosecutors. They can own their home without the public knowing where it is, at least here in Nevada. I'd imagine it's elsewhere too. So to protect those people so you can't find a police officer if you're looking them up. So some people can own their home kind of secretly, I guess, and you can't find them. But there's a lot of public information. And you post things on Facebook, you post things on Twitter, you post things on Instagram, you post things on Foursquare. You remember that one? That was location based of where you go. And there are people that work at places that aren't supposed to share things that do. That happens a lot, Yes, incredibly so. So putting your public information out there, there's no harm in most instances. Where you work, you think that that's a private thing?
The issue you get to is
I don't.
harassment, threats, which it always comes to death.
Oh,
threats.
and those specifically,
you can do that.
you can report that to police, and if you have online threats, but like we've talked about a lot, police aren't good at investigating things, and
They won't care.
and they might not care about some threat until after you're murdered, and then and then maybe even then
Unless-
they won't care. Who knows?
We had a case. Remember
What?
the guy that worked in the casino? And he sent an email to a lady that lived in Canada.
Oh, yeah.
If you're a part of a certain group, though.
Yeah, hate crimes they look at, and that was defined as a hate crime, right? So they take those more seriously. So I don't know what you do if you get doxxed. It depends. Like everything.
Dude,
the lawyer answer, well, what kind of answer is that? So
hey, keyboard warriors can't be keyboard warriors if they ain't got no fingers.
don't be famous
I'm
online.
kidding, don't do that.
Don't be famous online if you can't handle the negative comments. We love the negative comments. We love fighting with people. We did read some, and there's always more coming through.
I think the better thing to do is just whatever society deems as the thing to do at that time. Just
oh god,
don't think for yourself. Don't push back or question. Just
that's stupid.
Begin chewing your cud and become a sheep.
Ugh. Don't be famous online. Who cares about that?
Don't be famous anywhere.
That's so dumb.
I'd rather be like stupid rich and nobody knew who I was.
Yes,
because then the only thing that would change
100%.
is I'd have money. Nobody knows who I am. Nobody gives a shit. I'm fine with that.
You can just,
I'd live on an island or in a compound somewhere. I'd have everything that I want. You guys can all sit here and argue about who's the best president.
All right. Thanks for listening to Tangled Rights. Another episode.